How you doing, everybody? Greetings and welcome to another episode of 8 Bits in the Basement. So as always, I've been hacking around eBay looking to see if there's anything I could buy. And as always, I found something and parted with my hard-earned cash yet again. This time I'm after managing to pick myself up a Philips VG5000 μ. Now this is another French exclusive computer. It was only sold here in France and it was intended for the educational market. Unfortunately, it didn't quite work out. They were manufactured from 1984 up till about 1986, and everything kind of fell apart on it at that. But it was in competition with the Alice 4K and also the Thomson range of computers, the MO5 being one that I showed on this channel before. Now, these computers were made by Radio Technique in Le Mans here in France, and there were actually 3 different brands of exactly the same machine. The motherboard, keyboard and all was exactly the same. But there was this Philips version, which is in a nice black case, and there was also a Radiola and a Schneider version, which came in kind of creamish white cases. Other than that, the computers were exactly the same, ran the same software, same expansions and all the rest. This particular model that I picked up came with a power supply here and also with a little expansion card that lets me add 2 joysticks to it. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to open this guy up, have a look on the inside, see what chips it has, what they do, and just have a poke around the system. See that it's okay to turn on, that capacitors and all that are okay. And while we're at it, we'll do exactly the same thing for the power supply, just to make sure that we can turn it on without potentially damaging it. And we'll take it from there. But before we do any of that, I'd like to mention our kind sponsors, PCBWay. You may just find that you need a custom PCB to breathe life into that old 8-bit system of yours. Well, if that's the case, look no further than the sponsors of this episode, PCBWay, to make your PCB designs a reality. And with PCB fabrication starting for as little as $5 for 5 boards, and a free $5 coupon for every new customer, you can sample their services for as little as the cost of postage. So what are you waiting for? Upload your Gerber files to PCBWay.com now and let them help you bring your projects to life.
Le micro-ordinateur VG5000 Philips est un ami qui vous accompagnera dans votre appétit de jouer, dans votre appétit de créer, dans votre appétit d'apprendre. Dans ce monde fascinant de la micro-informatique, vous évoluerez ensemble, vous et le VG5000 Philips, le micro-ordinateur complice.
Okay, so the Philips VG5000 micro. So she's got 24K RAM and 18K ROM. So what we're going to do is we are going to strip it apart, have a little look at the inside and see what's what. Again, like most of these old systems, this guy is easy enough to take apart. We just turn her over here and there are 3 screws, here, here and here, that we remove. And that will allow us access to the innards of the system. So after we've removed those 3 screws, we flip the unit back over and you can remove the top cover just like that. It's held in with 4 clips here. Put that to one side. And what we have is our keyboard, and we have 2 boards that we can see here. But first of all, what we'll do is we'll remove this little keyboard, which is just a little mylar strip going into the main board itself. So that guy just pulls out like this. And the funny thing about this keyboard is that Radio Technics, who manufactured this system, they were also manufacturing Minitels. And what they did as a cost-saving measure was this is actually the keyboard from a Minitel, and it was used in these VG5000. So it's a direct kind of keyboard taken from a Minitel and put into this guy. So you'll see the same keyboard on a number of different systems made by Radio Technics. On the inside of the unit itself, what we have are 2 boards. We've got the main board itself with 6 main chips, and they're all socketed, which makes it really, really easy. If there's any repairs or, I suppose, potential upgrades, I don't know if any existed for it, that we want to do. And also there is this daughter board here, which is where the tape recorder or the cassette deck would plug into. And this guy, as far as I know, converts sound into TTL logic that can be fed to the board to aid with the saving and loading of programs. So that's what that little board was for. Now, to remove these boards from the system is quite easy as well. There's no screws used here. It's all little plastic clips. And in order to remove it, I think the easiest way to do it is to remove this little cassette board first. There's two little clips here that you can action with your fingers, and they should allow this board to lift up, and then we can kind of ease it out of the two main clips here. And the same thing with the main board. There's a clip here, and there's a clip here that we can action with our fingers while gently prying up the board. And that will allow us to liberate the entire PCB assembly from the lower plastics. Now let's have a look at this main board here. So on the inside, as I said before, the 6 main chips are socketed. We've also got 9 logic chips spread out around the board that aren't socketed, but those are TTL 74 series LS logic chips. Now the main ones here are composed of 3 8KB RAM chips. They're exactly the same make and model of chip. And then what we have here is an EF9345 graphics chip, the same as you would find in the Alice 32K. Beside it here we've got a Z80 processor, which is the same processor as you would find in the ZX Spectrum or in the Amstrad CPC. And the last chip over here is a 16KB ROM. And this chip here contains Microsoft Basic version 1 or version 1.1, depending on the age of the unit. Now, when we're talking about ROM and all the rest, it says on the actual plastic cover of this box that it's got 24 kilobytes of RAM, so we've got our 16 plus our 8, and it also says we've got 18 kilobytes of ROM. Now we have 16 here, but the other 2 is actually found in graphics chip here, and that's because this guy has a 2 kilobyte character ROM built into it. So that gives us our 18 kilobytes of ROM. Now, when it comes to timings on this board, this guy here is a 12 megahertz oscillator, and that feeds a 12 megahertz clock to this chip here, the graphics chip. That guy then is divided by 3, and a 4 megahertz signal is sent out to our Z80. So the Z80 is running at 4 megahertz on this board. Now, when it comes to connectors and whatnot on the board, we have a 50-pin edge connector here. We've got our power in here, and this guy actually takes 5 volt, 12 volt, and negative 12 volt. And I'm not sure, but I think the 12 volts are only needed for an expansion, because I've had a look at the pinouts on all these chips, and none of them require 12 volts. So it may be possible to run this system off a 5 volt supply. I'm not 100% sure about that though. Here we've got our video out, which is a red, green, blue synchronous Scart signal like many of these French systems used. And I didn't get a Scart cable with this, so I'm going to have to build up a cable for that. That's the next thing on the to-do list. And then, as I mentioned before, this little daughter board here is for our cassette ports. So we've got our cassette in here. And this guy, what it basically does is take the audio signal and turn it into TTL logic so that whatever signals it is giving or receiving can be processed by this main board here. But that is pretty much this system on the inside. Now, I've had a little look at the capacitors, and they look to be fairly all right. They probably will have to be changed at some stage. None of them seem to be leaking, bulging, or damaged in any way, so we'll leave them as they are for the moment. The one other little thing is there's a little LED here to show us that power is getting to the board. But that's pretty much this system on the inside. So what we'll do next is we'll have a look at the power supply. Okay, this here is the VU0022. This here is the power supply for the VG5000, and it's just a little plastic box with everything you need inside. It's got a plug on one cable, and then it's got this little 5-pin DIN connector that gives us our power out. But basically, looking at the box itself, there is a switch for on and off on the side of it, and underneath, surely had a label at some stage, but it doesn't anymore. It's held together with 4 screws. Basically, on this connector here, when it plugs in to the back of the unit, what we're looking at is the middle pin here isn't connected to anything, so that doesn't count. But we've got this pin up here. You know, sometimes I can be really, really stupid. And that's exactly what happened to me on the testing of this particular PSU. Because it was obvious to anyone that the 12 volt lines were too low. I mean, 10 volts is too low for a 12 volt line. But I soldiered on anyway. And when I powered the whole thing on, it seemed to work for about a minute, and then the PSU started making this really loud screechy sound, and the LED on the front of the VG5000 started blinking wildly, and basically it didn't work at all. So the only solution I had to quickly get this video made was to use a PC's power supply. So that's what I did. I removed the power cord from the original PSU, and I just put the bare wires into the correct little kind of outputs on the ATX power supply, and I used that to power the system. So there you go, that's what I had to do. And now on with the video. Okay, so I'm just back from having made up that little power supply, and everything seems to be working well, but I said just before I show it to you, I give you a little look over the unit itself. Just give a kind of a feel for it. So this here is the front of it, keyboard side. And printed on it here, we've got Philips VG5000 a little micro symbol up here on top. And we've got our Philips logo, and just underneath it is printed 24K RAM, 18K ROM. And over here we've got a little red LED that will show us when the system has been powered on or not. Now, this keyboard is kind of composed of big, thick plastic keys, kind of like you'd find on a calculator from the mid-70s. And it's in an AZERTY layout because it was intended for sale here in France. And over each of the letter keys, there is a basic keyboard command. So you've got likes of go to and C save and clear. And in order to access those quickly, you would press this control key and any one of the letter keys to give you the command that you wanted. So that's to get your keyboard shortcuts like you would on many computers of the time. Over here we've got another yellow key, and this guy actually resets the system. If you hold control and this guy down together, it'll give you a system reset. It's a strange little one. We'll go into that in a little while. This guy here is our return key, and what we have down here are two shift keys. So these guys do what shift keys do. They'll give us access to the higher symbol on some of the keys. And this shift key here, which kind of has a little box printed around it, when we start up the computer, we are in uppercase or majuscule letters, and when we press this guy, it'll go to lowercase, and press it again, we're back to uppercase. So that's what the keyboard kind of does. Over on this side here, we have our four cursor keys. We've got our numeric operators, our multiply and plus and equals and that, and we've got our backspace key here. We've got our run stopper, it's printed stop run key here as well, and this guy here is like a CLS key. It kind of clears the screen for us. But that is pretty much the keyboard on this system, how it's laid out and more or less how it works. Now the rest of the system, there's very little to see apart from here on the bottom. We've got a label that says that it is a type VG5019 by Philips, and it's made in France. And then we've got our serial number, and there are four, and there's actually two, supposed to be two rubber pads on the bottom, but I'm missing one. And around the back then, finally, we've got an expansion port here for numerous expansions that were available for the system. Here we've got a 5-pin DIN for our power. Here we've got an 8-pin DIN for our video out, our Scart video. And here we've got an 8-pin DIN for our cassette, as it's marked here if you can see it. But that is pretty much the Philips VG5000 as a little computer as it's presented. So we'll plug it in and we'll have a look and see it powered on. Okay, so it's high time that I showed you this little system working, or at least how far I got in making it work. So what I've done is I'm after connecting it up to my tape recorder here, and I've used the cassette cable from my MSX because it's actually compatible. The cassette port is the same as the MSX version of cassette port. The Scart lead going into the back of it is one that I made up myself because I didn't get one with the unit, so that's kind of just pushed in at the back, but it seems to be working away fairly okay. And the power supply, as you know, isn't working. So what I did was I recuperated the cable and I just branched it into my ATX power supply here. So usually what you do to turn it on is you'd flick a switch on the power supply and on it would come. But in this case here, what I do is I apply power, and it gives a nice little musical tone, and it gives us this turquoise screen that looks a lot like the Thomson MO5 screen did when it started up, same color at least. And what it's telling us is that we've got VG5000 basic version 1.1, and it's telling us that we have 13,758 octet disponible, because this computer speaks to us in French. It's after being sorted up in such a way that they've changed the ROM or whatever, so all the responses that come back from Microsoft Basic are in French. We've got error de syntax there, for example. So yeah, it's truly a French computer. So yeah, basically what we have is we've got like 13K available to us to type in our own programs here. So what we'll do is I'm going to tap in a quick Hello World program, just so I can show you kind of running and saving out a thing as well. So Hello World there, and we close the inverted commas, and I'll show you a quick keyboard shortcut for go to. For example, we're going to do 20 go to, so I press Control up here on top, and G will give me my quick keyboard shortcut to go to 10, and we press return, and then we can run it. If I press Control here and R, we've got run, and Hello World files down the screen as you would expect. Now to get out of that, what you do is you press Shift and you press Stop Run, and that tells us that it's stopped on line 10, again in French, because this thing speaks to us in French. So what I'll do is I'll list the program there, and now what we'll do is we'll save it out. So I use the csave command, which is cassette save. It's a command that's used right away across Microsoft Basic. And what we do is we put the name of what we want to save it into inverted commas. So we'll call it test 1, for example. We close the inverted commas. And what I need to do now, I make sure my cassette is rewound. I press record and play on the cassette. And then what I do is I press return. So it skips to the next line and nothing really happens. The cursor blinks away there and you think nothing's happening at all. But what you need to do is do absolutely nothing. Just wait until it gives us an OK prompt. And at that stage, it's after saving the program to cassette. So what we'll do now is we'll reset the computer and we'll load it back in. Now reset on this is a bit strange. I'm not even sure if it is reset or not, but as far as I can tell, to reset it, we press Control here. We press this yellow arrow key. Gives us the musical beep as well, and it looks as though it has reset. Yet when I type list, it's still there in memory, so it's not really a true reset. It's maybe resetting everything but the actual memory itself. But anyway, what I can do is I can type new, and that there will clear the memory for us. So in order to load back that program, we'll rewind our cassette first, and we type cload and press enter. The border goes red, we press play, and we wait. And it should find test 1 as we saved it out, and the border should go green with any little bit of luck at all. There we go. It's after finding test 1. It says trouver test 1. So now when I type list, there's our little program, and when I run it, it runs. So there you go, and that's pretty much as far as I got with it, because between the power supply failing on me and having to make up the Scart cable, I didn't get to sort up any games or anything to load up on it. So that's pretty much it on the little demo I can give you on this unit for now. So we'll go back to me in the outro. So there you go, everyone. Thank you very much for joining me for this little look at the Philips VG5000 Now, as I said, this is as far as I got with the system. I managed to write a Hello World program. I managed to save it to cassette and to load it back up a bit. So we're after making progress with a system that was unknown when I bought it. The reason I didn't really get to show you games and stuff is that the power supply failed and we had to make up another one. So that kind of ate into my time. But what I'm going to do is, coming up very, very soon, is we're going to have another look at this system. We're going to concentrate more on what it can do from a software point of view. And we're going to focus on games for the most part. And also what I have for it is this VG5200 joystick interface. So it's possible that this guy was really designed with games in mind, and it could really be a heck of an arcade machine. We'll have to see. But all that's coming up fairly soon. Yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave you with a Star Wars joke today. Yeah, I have a Star Wars one for you. That's why I'm wearing the t-shirt. So Luke and Obi-Wan, they were hungry and they went into a Chinese restaurant and they sat down and they ordered. and they were eating their food. Well, Luke was trying to eat the food, but he really couldn't get the hang of the chopsticks. He was kind of holding them all wrong, and he was trying with 2 hands, and food was flying everywhere, and it was flying into other people's drinks. And Obi-Wan looked at him and he said, "Luke, use the forks, Luke." See, that's actually, I think the Philips VG5000 is better than my jokes. Yeah, so I'm not going to subject you to any more for the moment. Keep an eye out, like and subscribe if you like these kind of things, and we will talk to you very, very soon. Once again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you. Bye bye.